They say Halloween is harmless fun, plastic skulls, flickering lights, laughter disguised as fear. But sometimes the things we decorate our homes with reveal the truth we hide from ourselves. We do not summon spirits by accident. We summon them by imitation. Every symbol is a seed, every image an invocation. What we celebrate, we cultivate. What we mock, we normalize. And what we hang upon our walls eventually hangs within our hearts. The ancient world knew this. They understood that symbols shape substance, that what you call entertainment is often education for the soul. A symbol is never neutral. It carries the moral electricity of the idea it represents. When we place darkness at our door in jest, we are not cursed by demons, we are conditioned by indifference. The true haunting of modern life is not ghosts, but emptiness, a hollowness masked by color, noise, and consumption. The spirit that enters is not evil in the cinematic sense. It is apathy, that slow erosion of reverence, that fatigue of meaning that creeps in when light becomes decoration instead of devotion. It begins so small, a cobweb spun not by spiders but by boredom, a skull glowing with LED lights that remind no one of mortality, a laugh at death instead of awe before it. We tell ourselves it's play, but the play becomes posture, and posture becomes principle. Before long, irony turns to identity. We become the thing we once only pretended to be. The spirit you summon is the spirit of superficiality, and it does not leave easily. Every era has its masquerade. We call ours the aesthetic. We trade depth for display and call it self-expression. We dress the house for the season and forget to dress the soul for eternity. We chase an image of thrill while neglecting the discipline of thought. And slowly, imperceptibly, our homes fill with decorations that mean nothing and hearts that feel nothing. The lights blink, the screens glow, the laughter grows louder, and beneath it an unspoken hunger hums. Is this all? The spirits that enter through such hunger are subtle. They whisper in advertising, they hide in algorithms. They tell you to buy more, to feel more. They replace awe with irony, gratitude with novelty, reverence with routine. And the more you decorate the outside, the emptier the inside feels. We do not need a haunted house. We have haunted hearts, rooms cluttered with unexamined desires, closets full of regrets we never unmask. Yet even in this shallowness, grace waits. It waits in the pause between the decorations and the silence after the party. It waits in that uneasy feeling that the laughter was a little too loud, the night a little too hollow. That feeling is not guilt. It is guidance. It is the soul knocking from within, asking to be remembered. It is the whisper that says, "Do not fear darkness, but stop pretending it is light." Halloween was once about facing mortality, a reminder that death is not a monster, but a mirror. The candles in pumpkins were not toys, they were prayers. The masks were not costumes, they were confessions. Humanity danced with death to remember life, but now we dance with distraction to forget it. And every forgotten truth leaves an open door for a spirit of confusion to enter. The real haunting is the loss of wonder. When you can hang a ghost in your window and feel nothing, when you can mock the sacred and call it style, when you can treat fear as entertainment instead of enlightenment, that is when the spirit of emptiness claims its place. Not because you invited evil, but because you evicted meaning. Still, all is not lost. For every decoration that mocks, there can be one that honors. For every false light, there can be a candle of gratitude. For every skeleton that laughs at death, there can be a heart that kneels before mystery. The cure is not to fear symbols, but to fill them again with sincerity. To remember that the true spirit of any season is the intention you place within it. Light the candle not for spectacle, but for remembrance. Hang the wreath not for trend, but for thanksgiving. Speak the words not for show, but for soul. When you do, the house changes. The same walls begin to breathe again. The same air feels alive, because You have not just cleansed the space, you have awakened it. You have turned the imitation of spirit into the invocation of peace. And when the night falls and the plastic ghosts sway in the wind, you will no longer feel fear or irony. You will feel awareness. You will see that every decoration was only ever a mirror showing what you valued, revealing what you believed. The question has never been, what have you summoned, but what have you chosen to embody? Fear has always been the oldest language of the soul. Before we learned to speak of love, we trembled before the unknown. The cave dwellers painted their terror on stone. The prophets wrapped it in fire. The poets sang of it as shadow. But somewhere along the long road of civilization, we learned to decorate fear instead of understand it. We turned reverence into ritual, and ritual into retail. We put on masks not to meet the divine, but to hide from ourselves. And so the night of the spirit became the season of sales. What was once sacred became aesthetic. What was once prayer became performance. Yet fear, for all its disguises, has always been a teacher. It is the soul's alarm bell, not its enemy. It exists to remind us where our faith has not yet reached. It whispers, here lies the place where trust still trembles. And if we listen, fear becomes revelation, the invitation to see what we have worshipped unconsciously. The man who decorates his house with symbols of death may not be calling to demons, but he is confessing something, that he does not know how to look at mortality without mockery, that he fears silence because it forces him to listen, that he needs constant movement because he no longer believes in meaning that stays still. Fear is not conquered by denial. It is transformed by attention. When you look directly into it, not with arrogance, but with awareness, you begin to see its outline dissolve. Because fear has no substance of its own. It feeds on avoidance. When you face it with calm, it collapses into clarity. You realize that most of what haunts you never existed. It was a shadow cast by your own expectations, your own ego trembling in the light of truth. The problem is not that the modern world fears too much, but that it fears the wrong things. We fear poverty, but not purposelessness. We fear failure, but not faithlessness. We fear loneliness, but not lovelessness. We fear death, but not a wasted life. We fill our homes with images of ghosts, yet ignore the living dead, those walking through days without gratitude, hearts without awe, souls without direction. Those are the true hauntings of our time. The haunted eyes behind screens, the haunted marriages smiling for photographs, the haunted ambitions that achieve everything except peace. But even in this desolation, hope whispers. Because light, no matter how small, cannot be extinguished by darkness, only forgotten by the distracted. The human spirit, even when buried beneath noise and neon, remembers its origin. It remembers the quiet pulse of eternity that beats beneath the chaos. And the moment you remember, too, even for a breath, the room changes. You feel the atmosphere shift. The walls that once felt heavy become porous. The air hums. It's not superstition, it's resonance. Because awareness itself is holy, and where it enters, disorder cannot remain. That is what true cleansing means, not chasing away imaginary spirits, but awakening the sleeping one within, the spirit of reverence, the spirit of gratitude, the spirit that sees beyond symbols to the essence they once represented. When you light a candle with intention, you are not summoning light, you are remembering it. You are aligning the seen with the unseen. You are declaring to the universe, I have not forgotten who I am. You will begin to notice how every act, no matter how ordinary, carries spiritual consequence. The way you decorate your home is not aesthetic, it is theology. The colors you choose, the energy you allow, the objects you honor, all of them tell the story of your heart. The question is not whether spirits exist, but which ones you nurture, the spirit of gratitude or greed, the spirit of humility or pride, the spirit of reverence or irony. Every choice is a seed, and every seed grows something invisible that will one day become your atmosphere. When you understand this, life stops feeling random. The world stops being a stage of accidents and becomes a field of meaning. You start to see patterns everywhere, the moral geometry of creation. You see that wealth without wisdom decays, success without service corrodes, beauty without goodness blinds. You see that the real curse of the world is not the presence of evil, but the absence of awareness, that the most dangerous spirits are not those whispered about in myth, but those we normalize daily. The spirit of comparison, of cynicism, of endless consumption. And yet even here, grace is patient. It waits beneath the noise, like soil waiting for rain. The moment you remember to pause, to look, to breathe, the sacred returns as if it had never left. You start to feel again. You taste gratitude in small things. You look at the fake cobwebs and remember real spiders weaving in the dark, patient, purposeful. You see the plastic pumpkins and remember that once a candle inside meant remembrance for the dead. You begin to see meaning behind the mockery, holiness behind the hollow. You begin to re-enchant the world, not by rejecting it, but by redeeming it. This is what true transformation is, not the destruction of the material, but the revelation of its spirit. The plastic ghost can become a parable. The skeleton on the lawn can become a lesson on mortality. The laughter of children in costume can become a hymn to innocence, if you remember the heart behind it. There is no place too profane for grace to enter only hearts too distracted to notice. And so, the lesson of Halloween is not to fear the symbols, but to fill them with meaning again, to stop summoning irony and start inviting reverence, to stop calling emptiness entertainment and start calling gratitude your daily decoration, to replace performance with presence, quantity with quality, noise with nuance, because what you invite into your home will one day shape the home within. The decorations of the heart are harder to take down. The images you hang on your walls eventually hang inside your mind, and the energy you tolerate eventually teaches your soul what to believe. So cleanse not with superstition, but with sincerity. Fill your space not with spectacle, but with stillness. Invite not attention, but awareness. Then the spirits that enter will not be those of fear or vanity, but of peace and purpose. Your house will glow with a kind of light that no candle can mimic the quiet brilliance of consciousness. And the world outside will begin to feel different too, because every time one person awakens, the air itself becomes clearer. You may never change the entire culture, but you can sanctify your corner of it. You can take what was once parody and turn it into prayer. You can walk among the plastic and remember the eternal. You can stand in a world that profits from fear and become one who profits from faith. And that single choice, that small reversal of value, begins the great undoing of emptiness itself. The greatest trick darkness ever played was convincing the world that light is boring, that meaning is outdated, that reverence is weakness. But the soul knows better. It knows that joy without depth is just noise, and that all beauty without truth eventually turns grotesque. It knows that the richest life is not the one filled with glitter, but the one filled with gratitude. So this Halloween, do not ask what decorations summon spirits into your home. Ask what habits summon peace. Ask what words invite wisdom. Ask what thoughts open the door for hope to enter. Because the spirits we fear have no power over the soul that remembers love. And when the night ends, when the masks are removed and the lights dim, you will feel something deeper than safety. You will feel sacred. The sacredness of having turned mockery into meaning, fear into faith, performance into presence. You will walk through your own home as though it were holy ground, because it always was. You simply had to see it again. The haunting does not end at the threshold of our doors. It stretches beyond the fences and neighborhoods, into cities pulsing with lights that never rest. The world itself has become a masquerade, a perpetual Halloween where faces change faster than hearts can follow. We decorate nations the way we decorate houses, with power, wealth, image, and call it progress. Yet beneath the glitter, something hollow hums. Civilization, so loud in its inventions, grows silent in its meaning. We do not hear the cries of ghosts, but the echoes of souls forgetting what they are. Look closely at the streets of modernity. Billboards glow brighter than the stars. The marketplace has replaced the temple. The scroll of screens has become our scripture. We do not kneel before altars, yet we kneel before algorithms. We have traded the divine mystery for the mechanical miracle, the contemplation of heaven for the consumption of novelty. And though we are surrounded by abundance, we hunger still, for the soul cannot eat light that has no warmth. The spirits that haunt our age wear elegant disguises. They walk in ambition, they speak in marketing, they do not curse, they advertise, they whisper not of evil, but of emptiness, that cold arithmetic of the modern heart that knows the price of everything but the value of nothing. They promise pleasure and deliver distraction. They promise identity and deliver imitation. And the people, unaware that they are being haunted, applaud their own decay. It is a strange thing to live in an age where irony has replaced innocence, where the sacred is a meme and the beautiful a commodity. The human being, made in the image of eternity, now measures worth in visibility. We no longer ask, "Am I good?" but "Am I seen?" And in this hunger for attention, we invite the darkest spirit of all, the spirit of vanity, the ghost of hollow glory. It does not destroy overnight. It devours quietly, whisper by whisper, click by click, until we no longer know whether we are living or performing life. The city, once a place of pilgrimage, now hums with restless worship of itself. Every advertisement is a sermon, every brand a prophet preaching salvation through possession. And yet the more we buy, the more we borrow from our peace. The transaction becomes a spell, the promise of fullness that leads to deeper lack. What we call economy is often just organized desire, millions of souls trading meaning for motion, purpose for profit, wonder for convenience. But what good is speed if you have forgotten where you are going? What good is wealth if it cannot buy you peace at night? What good is success if the soul that achieved it stands in silence, unsure what any of it was for? We have built towers taller than any cathedral, yet none reach the sky. We have conquered the laws of nature, but not the law of love. We have lit the world so brightly that we can no longer see the stars and mistake the absence of darkness for the presence of light. The haunting, then, is not supernatural. It is structural. It is woven into the rhythm of our days. It is the fatigue that never sleeps, the anxiety that never ends, the quiet despair behind smiling photos. We are haunted by the ghost of almost fulfilled, almost happy, almost free. We stand at the edge of abundance and starve because the feast is only for the senses, not the spirit. Yet the world does not need condemnation. It needs awakening. The marketplace is not the enemy, it is the mirror. It reflects the hunger we refuse to name. Every glittering ad, every empty promise, every idol of fame, they exist because something sacred was misplaced. When love was forgotten, lust appeared. When purpose was ignored, distraction rushed in. When truth was silenced, noise filled the gap. The answer is not escape, but remembrance, to bring meaning back into motion, to infuse the mechanical with the miraculous again. You can begin anywhere, in the small spaces of your life, in how you spend your time, how you speak, how you see. When you walk through the city, do not curse its noise. Listen for the longing inside it. When you see a billboard shouting for attention, whisper gratitude for the silence within you that cannot be sold. When you watch the frenzy of buying and selling, remember that the richest transaction in existence is still unseen, the exchange between love and awareness. The soul of a civilization is not preserved in its architecture, but in its intention. The pyramids still stand, but the hearts that built them have long turned to dust. The cathedrals remain, but the prayers that raised them are echoes. What endures is not the monument, but the meaning. If the meaning dies, even marble becomes haunted. And so, the work of our age is not to build higher, but to build deeper, to restore the moral foundation that holds the weight of progress. To think of wealth without wisdom is to think of light without warmth. Wealth is not evil, but it is dangerous without direction. It amplifies whatever rules the heart: generosity or greed, compassion or control. A soul unanchored will always mistake excess for elevation. The more it has, the emptier it becomes. Because possessions without perspective are like lanterns. With no flame they decorate, but do not illuminate. The spirit of our time tells us to collect followers, experiences, credentials, trophies. But the wise understand that collection is not completion. The self cannot be filled by adding, only by aligning. The more you gather without gratitude, the heavier you feel. The more you accumulate without awareness, the less you own yourself. Freedom does not come from possession. It comes from proportion, knowing how much is enough. And this perhaps is the true meaning behind the title that began this reflection. The 5 decorations that summon spirits were never cobwebs or candles or costumes. They were greed, pride, vanity, envy, and apathy. They hang not on the walls, but in the heart. They invite not demons, but discontent. They do not haunt houses, they haunt habits. Yet they can all be replaced by gratitude, humility, generosity, compassion, and wonder. Those are the real lights we're meant to hang. When you decorate your life with those virtues, your home becomes sanctuary, your mind becomes temple, your presence becomes prayer. And you will discover that you were never meant to fear darkness, only to illuminate it. The power of light is not to destroy shadow, but to reveal it. And once revealed, the shadow loses its dominion. So light your candle again, not for ceremony, but for consciousness. Let it remind you that even one flame can humble the dark. Let it remind you that the spirit you invite into your home is the one you carry in your heart. And when others see it, that quiet, unpretentious glow, they will remember their own. The redemption of the world will not come from noise or argument or spectacle. It will come from 1,000 small awakenings, candles, lit in ordinary rooms by ordinary souls, who finally remember that light was never a metaphor. It was always the message. And when that day comes, when enough homes burn not with irony, but with integrity, not with hollow fear, but with holy fire, the haunting will end. The air will clear. The world will remember itself again. For the spirits we summon are only reflections of what we forget. And the moment we remember, they vanish, because love has no rival once it is awake. There will come a night when the noise of the world can no longer hold you. You will look around at all that once dazzled, the neon signs, the endless scroll, the flashing symbols of success, and you will feel nothing. Not boredom, not bitterness, just a quiet recognition that the show is over. The decorations of the age have lost their magic because you have outgrown illusion. You will stand there, surrounded by abundance, and understand what poverty really is, not the lack of possessions, but the lack of purpose. And in that moment of clarity, something eternal stirs inside you. You will feel what generations before you called the soul. It does not speak in volume, but in vibration. It does not command, it calls. And it says, return. Return to what you once knew before the noise. Return to simplicity, to sincerity, to the soft truth that joy was never something to earn. You were not born to impress. You were born to express the divine. You were not placed here to compete. You were sent here to create. You were not built to decorate your fear. You were meant to illuminate it. The world forgot, but the soul remembers. And the moment you remember too, everything begins to shift. The money you make no longer measures you. It serves you. The work you do no longer defines you. It refines you. The things you once feared losing no longer enslave you, because you have found the one thing that cannot be taken awareness. That is the true treasure, the invisible gold that no market can manipulate, no thief can steal. Awareness turns every experience into wisdom, every challenge into teacher, every failure into altar. Once you taste that awareness, you'll begin to see how haunted the world really is, not by spirits, but by sleepwalkers. People chasing shadows of happiness through hallways of distraction. People buying more when they need less. People posting louder when they feel unseen. People mistaking motion for meaning, applause for love, wealth for worth. They are not evil. They are simply lost in the fog of forgetting. And the only way to save them is not by preaching, but by remembering for them, by living awake in a world that has fallen asleep. That is the quiet revolution the world is starving for. Not noise, but knowing. Not spectacle, but stillness. Not more followers, but deeper roots. The world doesn't need another influencer. It needs another light. The kind that burns quietly, faithfully, refusing to go out, even when the wind of cynicism howls. Because every act of genuine goodness, no matter how small, is an exorcism of despair. Every gesture of gratitude, every moment of humility, every choice of forgiveness, they drive out the unseen darkness more surely than any ritual ever could. And yet, you will not always be understood. The awakened rarely are. The haunted will call you naive. The proud will call you weak. But you will know that silence is not weakness. It is strength under control. You will understand that humility is not self-denial. It is self-mastery. You will see that faith is not blindness. It is sight beyond illusion. And you will walk through the same cities, the same crowds, the same chaos, yet untouched, because peace will travel with you like an atmosphere. For the soul that knows its source cannot be possessed, cannot be haunted, cannot be corrupted. It becomes its own sanctuary, a moving temple of truth in a marketplace of masks. Wherever you go, light goes with you, not as performance, but as presence. People will feel it before they understand it. They will sense that something in you cannot be bought, cannot be broken, cannot be bribed by the glittering ghosts of this age, and that recognition will awaken something ancient in them too. Because every soul, no matter how lost, still remembers the language of light. It is older than fear, older than pride, older than any culture or creed. It is the language of being itself, and when it is spoken through you, the world listens, not with ears, but with essence. You become not a preacher, but a reminder. You don't convert, you call forth. You don't teach, you awaken. You realize that the true war was never between good and evil, but between awareness and ignorance. Evil is not a presence, it is an absence, a vacuum where truth was forgotten. You don't defeat it by fighting, you dissolve it by seeing. Just as darkness cannot resist light, confusion cannot resist clarity. That is the quiet miracle of the awakened mind it redeems simply by perceiving correctly. So you stop chasing shadows and start tending to the flame. You live slower, but deeper. You listen longer, but hear more. You speak less, but say what matters. You no longer need Halloween to remind you of death, because you remember it every morning not as horror, but as holiness. Death is not the opposite of life. It is its completion, its proof of value. And when you live with that awareness, every moment becomes precious, every act becomes sacred. You will look at the plastic skeletons and see not mockery, but metaphor. You will see in them the reminder that all forms pass, but essence endures. You will smile at the irony that even the fake ghosts teach truth, that everything pretending to scare you was powerless all along. The true haunting was forgetting that you were eternal, and the true exorcism is remembering it. The world outside will continue its masquerade, the costumes, the advertisements, the noise, but you will move through it like a candle in a storm, not fighting the wind, simply burning. You will laugh without cruelty, celebrate without corruption, and work without worshipping your work. You will hold wealth lightly, wield power kindly, and give love freely. You will not fear losing what was never yours, because you finally know that what is truly yours, your awareness, your virtue, your peace, cannot be taken. That is the secret the saints and sages all carried, though each spoke it differently. That abundance is not having all things, but needing nothing. That happiness is not a prize, but a posture. That heaven is not a place, but a perception. The state of seeing divinity everywhere, even in imperfection. And so, the story that began with fear ends with fullness. The decorations that once mocked the sacred become reminders of it. The symbols that once summoned emptiness now point toward eternity. The world itself becomes a parable, written not to frighten, but to awaken. You will walk out into the cool night of autumn, hear the wind rustle through the trees, and feel something indescribable, not joy, not sorrow, but recognition. The same energy that moves the leaves moves you. The same breath that animates creation breathes in you. And in that realization, every fear evaporates. Because the one who knows oneness can no longer be haunted. You will turn off the lights, blow out the candles, and see that the darkness was never your enemy, it was your teacher, revealing the brightness you carried all along. And as the room settles into silence, you will whisper a truth older than the world itself. I am not afraid of the dark, because I have become the light. And that will be the end of the beginning. For what was once a season of fear becomes a season of faith. What was once decoration becomes devotion. What was once mockery becomes meaning, and what was once haunted is now holy. They laugh at ghosts because they no longer believe in them. They hang plastic skeletons on their porches, string cobwebs across their doors, and call it fun, forgetting that symbols were never made for decoration. Every image was once a message, every ritual once a remembrance. The modern world no longer bows before altars. It buys them in bulk, and in our play with darkness, we have forgotten what darkness was for. The first spirit we summon is not some shadow from folklore. It is indifference. It arrives quietly, wrapped in irony, smiling behind LED lights. It is the comfort of not caring. Once people lit candles in windows to remember the souls of the departed. Now we light up plastic pumpkins to amuse the living. The difference seems small, but in that smallness the sacred slips away. What we once did with reverence, we now perform with habit, and habit without heart is hollow, a hollow place where spirits, unseen but real, begin to gather. The second spirit is vanity, the need to be seen, even when we feel nothing. The old feasts of remembrance have become stages for comparison. Who has the brightest lights, the biggest display, the most impressive illusion of mystery? We spend fortunes trying to impress a world that is too distracted to notice. And in doing so, we call forth something subtle but dangerous, the worship of image. The mirror becomes more important than the soul it reflects. We no longer decorate our homes to express joy. We decorate them to disguise emptiness. Every glittering light becomes a prayer to approval, every photo a plea for attention. The third spirit is fear itself, not the reverent awe that once taught us humility, but the counterfeit fear sold for entertainment. The world has learned to package terror as pleasure. We scare ourselves not to awaken, but to feel alive. We chase the thrill of adrenaline because the quiet of peace has become unbearable. We laugh at death to hide that we are terrified of meaninglessness. And in this confusion, fear loses its holiness. It no longer points us toward the eternal. It traps us in the temporary. The world pretends to play with darkness, but ends up shaped by it. For whatever we play with, we practice. The fourth spirit is greed, the endless appetite that can turn even tradition into transaction. The shelves fill with plastic, the landfills rise, and still the hunger grows. We spend to feel generous, consume to feel complete, decorate to feel delivered. But the more we gather, the less we have, because nothing material can fill a spiritual hunger. The feast that was once a communion becomes a market. We do not summon spirits with rituals anymore. We summon them with receipts. And the fifth spirit, the quietest, the most familiar, is forgetfulness. It creeps in softly, disguised as fun. It is the forgetting of why we celebrate at all. We forget that light was meant to honor the dead, that masks were meant to remind us of humility, that gathering was meant to remind us of belonging. We forget that fear was meant to teach courage, not consumption. We forget that every symbol once pointed toward the soul, and when memory dies, meaning dies with it. That is when the true haunting begins, not with ghosts, but with the echo of values we no longer live. Yet even as these spirits gather, grace waits behind them. It always has, because the same act that invites emptiness can be redeemed by intention. A candle lit in gratitude drives away the cold. A mask worn with reflection teaches empathy. A gathering held with love turns performance into prayer. The difference is not in the ritual, but in the reason. Every gesture has two sides, imitation or illumination. One feeds the hollow, the other fills it. You see, the world was never cursed. It was merely careless. We forgot that creation listens. The energy we release through thought and action builds the atmosphere we breathe. When we act with reverence, the air itself feels clean. When we act with vanity, even beauty feels heavy. The unseen responds to the seen. And whether we call it energy or spirit, it moves according to attention. Where our focus goes, our world follows. So perhaps the real question is not what decorations summon spirits into your home. It is what intentions decorate your heart. For the house is only a reflection of the inhabitant. If peace lives within, even darkness becomes holy. If pride reigns, even light becomes polluted. The soul paints the walls of reality long before the hands touch them. That is why every true transformation begins within. The child who carves a pumpkin in wonder summons joy. The parent who hangs lights in gratitude summons warmth. The stranger who opens the door to laughter summons belonging. The same objects that once mocked death can now honor life if the heart remembers what it is doing. Intention is the difference between a haunted house and a home filled with light. And so, when you walk through your neighborhood this season and see the cobwebs, the skeletons, the witches and ghosts, do not judge. Instead, look deeper. See what they are trying to remember. Underneath the plastic and the parody lies a universal longing. The longing to feel alive in a world that too often feels artificial. The longing to touch mystery again, even if only through imitation. The longing to believe that something still moves beyond what can be seen. That longing is not foolish. It is sacred. It is proof that the spirit of awe, though buried, is not dead. Fear, in its purest form, was never meant to enslave you. It was meant to awaken you. The old world knew this. The people who first lit candles against the night understood that darkness was not the enemy, ignorance was. They did not fear the shadow itself. They feared forgetting the light. Fear was the beginning of wisdom, the reminder that something greater moved unseen, something worth reverence, something worth humility. But when reverence is lost, fear becomes entertainment. When humility fades, mockery takes its place. And when mockery becomes habit, it invites emptiness dressed as laughter. The modern world no longer trembles before eternity. It trades eternity for irony. We wear symbols of death while running from the thought of it. We laugh at what we do not understand and call that laughter courage. We drape our homes in images of decay, yet cannot face the quiet truth that everything beautiful fades so that something better might rise. Death itself was never the horror. It was the teacher. But we silenced the teacher with decoration and forgot that the lesson was life. In every age, humanity has built disguises to avoid this truth. The ancient carved idols, the modern buys them. We have replaced sacrifice with spectacle and spirit with slogan. Yet the same law governs both eras. What you give attention to grows power. When you surround yourself with symbols, they begin to shape your imagination. If the symbols mock life, life itself begins to feel like mockery. But when the symbols honor life, even the smallest acts become holy. Look closer at your own rituals. The way you prepare a room, the way you speak, the way you move through your days, these are decorations of the soul. Every habit is a kind of symbol. Every thought, an invisible ornament on the walls of your inner home. If your thoughts are filled with gratitude, your home glows even in the dark. If they are filled with complaint, even the brightest light feels cold. What you host within determines what enters from without. To transform fear into faith is to remember that both come from imagination. Fear imagines loss. Faith imagines love. Fear anticipates absence. Faith assumes presence. Fear builds walls. Faith opens windows. Both see the unseen but one sees threat, while the other sees promise. The same power that paints ghosts in the mind can also paint angels. The brush is yours. The choice is yours. What you imagine, you invite. So when you stand in a room filled with shadows, literal or symbolic, do not rush to flee. Be still. Look at them until they lose their teeth. You will find that every shadow is only the shape of something real blocking light. Fear is not proof of evil. It is proof of something worth believing in. It is your reminder that love still matters, that death still points toward life, that the dark only exists because the light is real. In this understanding, the mockery of the world loses its charm. You begin to feel the hollowness behind the laughter that sneers at the sacred. The jokes that once amused you begin to sound tired. The noise of indulgence begins to grate. But do not let disgust replace discernment. Let compassion take its place. For those who mock are not evil, they are thirsty. They laugh because they have forgotten how to pray. They decorate because they have forgotten how to adore. The human spirit cannot live without reverence. If it will not worship truth, it will worship irony. You will start to see that even in its mockery, the world is still searching for God. The costumes, the colors, the gatherings, all of them point to the ancient instinct that life is mystery, and mystery deserves ritual. Humanity cannot help but perform what it has forgotten. The play is hollow only because the heart has not yet remembered the script. And when the heart remembers, the play becomes prayer again. That is the quiet redemption of all things, the return of meaning to the meaningless. The moment a man lights a candle, not for vanity, but for remembrance, the room changes. The same wax, the same wick, the same flame, yet the spirit feels different, because intention has changed its language. Intention is the alchemy of the soul. It turns mockery into meaning, decoration into devotion, habit into holiness. When you decorate your home, do it consciously. Let every color be a confession. Let every light be a lesson. Let the air itself remember who you are. The spirit responds to sincerity. It does not care about perfection, only about presence. When you walk through your home with gratitude, even the smallest detail begins to shine. You will see the divine reflected in the ordinary, the sacred humming beneath the secular. You will understand that holiness is not found in the church alone, but in the care you give to creation itself. And so, the old symbols of Halloween are not enemies, they are invitations. The skull reminds you of mortality, but also of meaning, that life is precious because it ends. The candle inside the pumpkin is the soul shining through the shell of the flesh. The mask is the human conditioned spirit disguised as skin. The night itself is the mystery that makes the morning possible. When you see with awakened eyes, even the ghost becomes a teacher. For what is a ghost but a longing that refuses to die? What is your own soul but the longing of God moving through flesh? You will begin to see that fear and faith are not opposites, but stages of the same awakening. Fear is the knock. Faith is the opening of the door. Fear is the trembling before mystery. Faith is the embrace of it. The difference between the haunted and the holy is not that one faces darkness and the other avoids it. It is that one stops at fear while the other walks through it into love. This is how darkness becomes sacred. You do not destroy it. You transform it. You do not curse it. You clarify it. You hold it to the light until it reveals its purpose. Every trial, every shadow, every pain, they all ask the same question: will you see me as enemy or as invitation? Those who answer with faith turn wounds into wisdom, and the world itself begins to heal through them. And when that happens, every symbol shifts. The haunted house becomes the heart-learning humility. The graveyard becomes the garden of gratitude. The skeleton becomes the reminder that love is stronger than decay. The night becomes the canvas on which light paints its victory. You begin to live in a redeemed world, not because it changed, but because you did. That is how mockery becomes meaning, how decoration becomes devotion. It is not an outward reform, but an inward revolution. The lights outside flicker, but the light within burns steady. You do not abandon the world, You anoint it. You do not reject the season. You revere it. You live in the same world, but you move through it differently, gently, attentively, awake. And wherever you walk, darkness yields.